You know how you feel exhausted building your business? What if you're so tired because you're wearing a mask and performing because somewhere along the way you realized to be professional, you had to edit yourself and you've been editing yourself ever since and you're doing it right now in your own business? Welcome to Codeswitch Rebellion. This is the unfiltered podcast for Black women who are done shrinking, chasing perfection, and performing professionalism in their own business. I'm Melanie Denny, aka Melly D, personal branding consultant and the identity strategist. This is where we talk about what it really takes to build a personal brand rooted in who you are, not who you were conditioned to be. Round here, we have real, raw conversations about what it means to show up with integrity, authority, and bold authenticity so you can attract better clients and bigger opportunities. Let's get into it. So we've been taught that professionalism equals credibility, right? If you are professional and you show up a certain way, then people will believe that you're good at your job or you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And you have to dress a certain way to instill that trust. And you have to speak a certain way to instill that trust, to make people feel like you're intelligent enough to do what needs to be done. You need to be emotionally intelligent and regulate your tone and make sure you're not too emotional and avoid being too much, not bringing too much energy or too much passion, right? But what if this whole entire concept of professionalism is really just cultural conditioning for people of color, aka mostly Black people? So I came across an essay or article a few years back, written by Leah Goodridge. Okay, this was published in the UCLA Law Review. This is an attorney, Leah is. It was published March 29, 2022, and it was titled Professionalism as a Racial Construct. And that really caught my eye because at that time, I was still trying to figure out how I wanted to go about this personal branding thing, trying to determine if I really wanted to call out that I work with Black women, really digging a little bit deeper into how we show up in our business. And it was such an interesting read. I will drop the link around the show notes here. But basically, she's telling different instances of her story where her professionalism came into question as an attorney. She had been a practicing attorney for 10 years. And the main points of what she's talking about is that professionalism operates as a racialized standard and it historically centers whiteness as neutral. And it basically kind of codes certain behaviors as polished, but other behaviors as unprofessional. And it really rewards people who assimilate versus people who are authentically themselves. And she's doing this from the lens of assessing the legal industry. Okay. She talks about attorneys and paralegals and even down to like jury selection. I'm here to say maybe this is broader than just the legal field, right? Because corporate has very, 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 very similar nuances when it comes to what they determine as professional. So, in this episode, I'm going to break down how professionalism became the default standard. I want to talk about how it conditions Black women specifically, and then what it looks like to redefine professionalism on your own terms. All right, so let's get into this thing. So, first, let's talk about the definition of professionalism, okay? Because this was something that I had to go back and really understand. So I had to look up this word professionalism. So professional as an adjective says worthy of or appropriate to the professional person, competent, skillful, or assured. So basically, you could do your job well. You have the skills, you know what you're doing, you have the knowledge, and you are confident in yourself to be able to do the job. That is a definition of being professional. Professionalism is the competence or skill expected of a professional. Or even Another one I saw was exhibiting a courteous, conscientious, and generally business-like manner in the workplace. And now it has become a set of standards that an individual is expected to adhere to in a workplace, usually in order to appear serious, uniform, and or respectful. Now, in Leah's article, right, she's talking about professionalism that was developed within white middle class institutional norms, right? So certain speech patterns, certain hairstyles, certain expressions on the face, certain dress was acceptable. And these standards were presented as the standard, like universal. But they were modeled after, like I said, white middle class people, institutional norms. Basically, how white people presented straight hair, a specific way they speak, right? So, natural hair versus polished hair. Natural hair, the way it grows out of our head, is not the norm and therefore deemed unprofessional. So, now everything that is not that, right, is a deviation from the standard, aka unprofessional. So, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for my client base, me as a Black woman? What does this really mean? Basically, we have learned over time to monitor ourselves, to police ourselves, to make sure that our tone is right, make sure we're not speaking too loudly, to make sure we're not making crazy facial expressions, to pick the right words at all times, right? We can't be too loud, we can't be too emotional, we can't be too opinionated, we can't be too ethnic, right? And professionalism and showing up in this way rewarded those who conformed to the norms. And by reward, I don't mean like they get promoted, because we can look at the org chart and see. But I mean rewarded by the ability to merely exist in that world. Like you can sit with us as long as you have these parameters governing the way you carry yourself. And this is sad for us because it really does eat at our identity, right? Because we go to these places and now we're coming into that world as a different person. We carry ourselves differently, we speak differently, we dress differently, we do our hair differently, we express ourselves totally differently. Our energy is different. We're more reserved, like all of these things. And then it picks away at us slowly if we don't keep it in check. And I think that it's really, really damaging to our mental health. We also get overwhelmed and tired from having to constantly keep up with the act, to constantly keep up with the standard. I've heard so many stories about women, oh, I got to keep my hair straight. Sometimes I just want to, do a blowout or a wash and go, but I got to straighten it out because I'm going to work. Like, that's a lot. Okay. And that gets overwhelming as well. Then you start to internalize who you are as a person, and it kind of eats at your confidence, and self-doubt start to creep in, right? Like, I am not good enough as my real raw self to step into these places. Am I not good enough in other places as well? Am I not good enough in general? And then you tend to play a little bit smaller when it comes to certain situations and certain people in leadership, etc., because now you feel like you're constantly being judged, you're constantly under a microscope, right? So for those of us who feel the need to be so buttoned up and so perfect, and so polished and so even keel, I am here to let you know you being who you are is not unprofessional, because who you are is at the root of everything that you do. As long as you are being authentic, being respectful, and being competent in your job, that is being professional. So here's where it all like hits home, because that behavior is typically upheld in corporate spaces, right? And a lot of my clients who are now entrepreneurs come from that space. So even after you leave there, it has been so ingrained that now you're softening your own message. You're muting your own tone. You're watering down your own voice. You avoid being polarizing, too much, too energetic, too loud, too bright, because you have been so conditioned to dim yourself to fit in to that structure. And you think you're being strategic and you think you're being professional, but baby, you are just performing. It's all a performance. You constantly asking yourself, is this going to sound credible? Is this too bold? Is this too much? Is this too, am I too? And the real question ends up being, who are you doing this for? I got a quick question for you. Do you keep attracting the wrong clients or no clients at all? Something's going wrong with your personal brand, boo. And it's okay, but before you can fix it, you gotta really know what's going on. You gotta assess and see what needs to be fixed so you can take the next best steps. If you're ready to get off that struggle bus and stop winging it, book a digital brand audit. This is a personalized deep dive on how you're showing up online. We dive into what's working, what's missing, and what's really holding you back from those opportunities and those clients that you know you deserve. Book your digital brand audit today. So I just want to read a quick snippet from Leah's essay. Okay. It says, I sought guidance from Black attorneys whom I admired and revered. They all practiced in different areas of law for over a decade. Their advice all started with, don't let them make you look unprofessional. I spoke with at least 10 Black attorneys with decades of experience in courtrooms, and every single one understood and iterated that despite white opposing counsels or peers acting in the most inappropriate and unprofessional manner, I was the one who would look unprofessional if I came close to or matched their behavior. Professionalism did not apply to them, but it applied to me. And listen, this makes total sense because you're on their turf. They run the show. They call the shots. They set the tone. And so I am not here to try to convince anyone or encourage anyone to do anything to help change that system, because that system is well established. And to change that system will take a lot more than my little island girl Detroit self calling it out. Okay. I'm here to say, if you have left that environment, check yourself and make sure you're not upholding those same standards, because they no longer apply in a lot of instances when you are the brand, when you are the business owner, when you are the boss, right? So that is the message. I want to offer you some food for thought and start to think about professionalism and redefining what it really is. For me, you really need to think about alignment with who you are, integrity, your competence, and clarity. Clarity in communication, clarity in messaging, clarity in who you are, how you show up. All of those things. When we really get into these things, this will help us to stop performing. And professionalism should really just mean that you honor your word, you respect the people that you work with, you operate with excellence, which we do very well, and that you lead with integrity. Okay? It should not mean erasing your culture, policing your expression, diluting your voice. Because credibility and professionalism should not require you to erase yourself, erase parts of yourself. So, instead of asking, is this professional enough? Am I, professional enough? Do I look professional enough? Do I sound professional enough? Ask yourself, is this aligned with who I am? Is this in excellence? Is this respectful? Is this truthful? Other than that, baby, if your hair is big and bold, you're still professional. If you like bold, bright colors, you are still professional. If you use a little slang here and there, a little AAVE as they call it these days, a little ebonics, you are still professional. Because we are using white slang all day, every day, because that's become the standard. And so if you have your own business, you don't have to play by these rules anymore. You get to set the rules, you get to set the tone, and you get to show up as your authentic self without constantly monitoring yourself and policing yourself. So if you're wondering how you could keep that corporate culture like over there and really step out of that and into who you are, next episode, I'm going to be breaking down all the different ways that your personal brand is being watered down because of that conditioning and how you can make yourself way more potent in your own business. And don't forget, your identity is the strategy. See you next time. If this episode sparked something in you and you want to continue the conversation, join me over on Substack. I would love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. Till next time, y'all, remember, your identity is the strategy.